Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. It's the Ukraine War news update, first part thereof for the 14th of April 2024. This is going to be a relatively quick video today because the bandwidth of information is being somewhat strangled by the Iranian attack on Israel. So there's understandably, I guess, a lack of information coming out as many open source intelligence and analysts and sources are shifting their focus, possibly momentarily, away to what happened last night, and the usual bits and pieces of information that I would glean from them just aren't there today. Also, Andrew Perpetua's loss list is not out yet. But nonetheless, we'll go to look at the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before, all the usual caveats apply, of course. And we've seen the last 4 or 5 days have been very costly for the Russians. Not to say they haven't been costly for the Ukrainians, with major attacks around Chasiv Yar. Ukrainians are really there is some worry around there that the Russians have got into Chasiv Yar, to the east of the town, and that the reinforcements have had to go there, and so I assume that the Russians will have had some impact on Ukrainian forces there. The Ukrainians would have taken some losses, but in general the Russians have been grinding forward but taking massive losses in terms of equipment and indeed personnel. The personnel losses have been in the 800s for most of the week, slipping up to over 1,000 yesterday, and then down to almost 900 again today. But that's a significant loss for the Russians. 890 personnel lost, 5 tanks less than we have seen, and 20 armored personnel vehicles less than yesterday for sure. 34 artillery systems is a useful number for the Ukrainians to have retreated from the Russians there. Altogether, that's still like fairly difficult day for the Russians in terms of equipment losses, just not as bad as we have seen the tank losses under average. One multiple launch rocket system and 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems. Depends what those anti-aircraft warfare systems are as to, working out whether that's a valuable loss there. 63 vehicles and fuel tanks taken out is a large number in that category, as is 12 pieces of special equipment. That can be a huge range in that category. It can be things like surveillance and comms equipment, just cameras on a stick, basically, a pole with the camera set up. Or it could be an excavator, like a digger, or it could be a deminer, or so on and so forth. Lots of different things can be included in that category. So anyway, nonetheless, fairly good day for the Ukrainians, I guess. We come on to look again. I talked about this yesterday, at the Russian use of these Ural vehicles that have been adapted. These are basically trucks that would not be sent towards the front line, but now we're seeing them being destroyed near the front lines. What's going on? Well, most analysts seem to think that, and I would agree, this shows a lack of other vehicles to be able to use, such as APCs and infantry fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers, infantry fighting vehicles that are designed to take troops to the contact line. These aren't designed to take troops to a contact line. They're designed to take troops from one place to another in relative safety, right? Or to take equipment and supplies. Russians are increasingly using modified Ural 4320 trucks to storm Ukrainian positions. Aside from the drone cage, it's quite telling that the Russian army increasingly has to resort to using trucks instead of IFVs for that purpose. The horrific amount of Russian losses regarding armored vehicles is taking its toll, says Tendar, the German source here. This attack occurred in Robotyne, and just like the others in the last weeks, this one failed miserably as well. I think it's more evidence to suggest that the Russians are losing lots of equipment, and then you get a kind of at least an intuitive sense that these figures are somewhat justified that the Ukrainian General Staff release. Here we see an explosion of a Buk surface-to-air missile system, a Russian one, in Ukraine's east. Why I'm showing you this is, one, it's a fairly high value air defense system. So there were 2 claimed to have been lost yesterday. This could be one of them. It could be the one from the day before. But also, this is what happens when you hit one that's full of missiles. So sometimes we see pieces of equipment get blown up and nothing happens. It's just like puff of smoke, and that could signify that it's a decoy, a wooden decoy that's been destroyed by a drone, or indeed a missile, and the explosion is the drone or missile itself exploding, but there's no secondary explosions, and that's why often we look at these images and go, that's probably a decoy. Not certain. It could be one that's particularly empty of missiles, or empty of fuel and missiles. But you would expect, if it's the real McCoy, it's going to be full of fuel, full of missiles. And you get stuff like this happening, which is all sorts of secondary cooking off. Air defense weapons remain among the priority targets. Various videos showed the destruction of at least half a dozen Russian SAM systems over the past week. So Ukrainians appeared to have been targeting explicitly Russian air defense systems again, possibly with a view to Ukrainian air defense getting a little bit closer, trying to take out the Russian airframes as they are dropping the guided glide bombs that are being so problematic for the Ukrainians. Right, this is a lorry driver in Sumy region. Lorry, truck for anyone outside the UK. A lorry driver in Sumy region has been killed this morning when Russia dropped explosives from a drone onto the truck. This happened in Krasnopil. So, yeah, this is what they do. This is clearly not, I would posit, clearly not a military target being taken out by a Russian drone. That is what we've come to expect. Right, that's all for that section. We're moving on to the distant strikes and ordnance. Not a busy night for the Ukrainians or for the Russians. It seems to be relatively quiet. Israel's not the only victim, though, by terror last night. Aside from the terror from Mullah Iran, says Tendar, Russia continued its terror campaign against Ukraine. 10 Shahed drones were launched last night against Ukrainian cities, especially Kharkiv, but all were eliminated. So 100% interception ratio, which is what you'd expect if only 10%. Depends where they're sent, to be honest, as to how well the Ukrainians do in taking them down. But let's not forget that, this happens every night for the Ukrainians. And while the whole world is going absolutely nuts about Iran attacking Israel, that sort of thing, okay, maybe not to that scale, but that sort of thing has been happening every night, really, since the beginning of the war. 2 years ago, and people have kind of normalized, got used to it, but we shouldn't. We should not be desensitized to the terror that Russia is inflicting on Ukraine. A Russian attack on Kharkiv, Oblast kills 2, so it was attack. I don't know what this strike was, though. A house in the village of Vasile was taken out. It's probably a guided glide bomb or shelling. It could be. I'm not sure, but anyway, Kharkiv has been targeted. Here's a wreckage of a downed or fallen Russian missile, X-22, found in Donetsk region. The size of it is quite a significant piece of kit, that. Now, whether this is another example of a Russian missile going awry and falling short of even getting into Ukraine proper, we have seen an awful lot of Russian missiles fall on their own territory, and guided glide bombs as well. So this could be another example, or it could have got to non-occupied Donetsk, not sure. Right, I talked yesterday about a strike on Luhansk, the city of Luhansk, with what looked like scalpel Storm Shadow missiles. Russians were claiming they were Taurus. Ukraine's Air Force commander publicly thanked pilots who launched the attack on Luhansk yesterday with Western missiles. A Russia command center was said to be hit. Mykola Oleschuk promised, quote, "There will be more such strikes when we receive more missiles from Western partners." Interesting omission that they're low on those sorts of missiles as well. Significant, and I think I've said before that the UK should have just been saying, right, we won't provide anything else, we're just going to spend billions of quid on giving you Storm Shadows, and we're just going to go Storm Shadow crazy. That's my opinion. They just need an absolute ton of these things because they are so effective. Smart reaction from Ukraine's president to the boast from Israel that, with the help from the USA, UK and France, 99% of objects fired by Iran were destroyed. This is really significant. So there's no functional difference between Israel being attacked by Iranian drones and Russia being attacked by Iranian drones and Iranian missiles sent by Russia. The difference is that Russia is a nuclear state and Iran isn't yet. And so as a result, the Allies feel that they can come to the help of Ukraine with airframes working outside, to the help of Israel, with airframes working outside of Israeli airspace and outside of Israeli territory, and striking Iranian weapons, ordnance, outside of Israeli territory before they get to the border. And this has been explicitly prohibited when Western nations have provided ordnance and weaponry to Ukraine. Not only do we not provide our own planes and fly them ourselves outside of Ukraine to hit down missiles and drones that come into Ukrainian borders, but we say that if you are going to use our weaponry, you can't fire them into Russia. And the only functional difference that I can work out is that Russia has nuclear weapons. And that is the deterrent, de-escalatory characteristic of nuclear weapons. Because here, Russia has literally invaded Ukraine. Iran hasn't invaded Israel. So there is more justification to do the things that we did as allies for Israel last night with Ukraine. It's only nuclear that is the differentiating factor. It is only nuclear. That is what I talked about in my analysis earlier on today of the Iran attack. That is why you will get a lot of countries going, we really need nuclear. Why? Because people won't attack us then. Why? Because allies will even allied nations who ally themselves against each other, with each other against us. So say we're on the wrong side of NATO or on the wrong side of the EU, whatever, they won't attack us like they did to Iran if we have nuclear missiles. It will promote nuclear proliferation. And that is a challenge to world safety. So, yeah, Zelensky says the world has, and this is such a good point, the world has everything necessary to stop any missile, any Shahed drone, and other forms of terror. It only requires the decisions that can restore true and lasting security. Ukraine can defeat Russian terror, protect its own life and the life of the entire Europe and other regions of the world from the spread of evil. This is why we need the support of our partners, and every day of delay in the delivery of aid results in more destroyed homes and ruined lives. I am grateful to everyone in the world who truly helps defend against terror, and I thank everyone who is making every effort to keep evil from prevailing. Such a good point here. Like, you've just proven that you can destroy everything that Russia sends at us. Everything that Russia sends at us can, in principle, be destroyed if we all work together. But you're refusing to do so. Why? Nuclear. Okay. War Translated, Dmitry says that the interception of Iranian missiles and drones by American and British air defense systems over Israel is very showing. On one side, Russia has been attacking Ukraine for 2 years using various means, ranging from cruise missiles to guided glide bombs and drones, including those supplied by Iran. Despite this, Ukraine stands alone in defending itself against these deadly assaults, and with neighbouring NATO countries even tolerating Russian provocations with missiles flying into NATO airspace, and no one takes them out. Meanwhile, the close alliance between Russia and Iran, the new axis, is evident, yet targeted strikes against Iran, including its top military figures, are carried out regularly and effectively. The disparity between Iran and Russia is not vast, except for one crucial aspect. Russia possesses huge nuclear arsenals and frequently employs them in nuclear blackmail. While the West states how it is hesitant to engage in direct conflict with Russia to avoid direct confrontation, it seems more willing to confront Iran. Concerningly, the West is trembling before Russian nuclear blackmail and will continue to being intimidated, and of course this does not mean that the Americans and the British should have avoided helping Israel, which is not in NATO, unlike Ukraine. That's not the point. No, the issue is that Ukraine's so-called allies have been begged to provide defence to protect the vital energy infrastructure, while to others the aid is handed out without any hesitation. What's going to be interesting going forward is when certain MAGA Republicans will say, we want to help Israel against Iran, against Iranian drones and cruise missiles, and then they have to answer why, if Iran is if you're fine with Iran being the enemy, then how can Russia be using Iranian missiles and drones against Ukraine, and that's okay to let that happen? Why are you not being strong on Russia when it's essentially a proxy of Iran in a weird way? Why are you okay with not allowing Ukraine aid because, Ukraine is trying to defend itself against Iranian ordnance, yet you are really up for supporting Israel against Iranian ordnance? There might well be a double standards that should be exploited by those who are demanding aid for Ukraine. And Jay in Kiev adds, after seeing US and British jets shoot down hundreds of Iranian missiles and drones last night, saving thousands of Israeli lives, everyone in Ukraine is saying the same thing. The Russian military is now weaker than the Iranian military. But not only will allies not shoot down Russian missiles and won't even give us the jets to do it ourselves, we even know where all the Russian bomber aircraft sit, but allies refuse to give us the tools to destroy them. Russia is completely destroying Ukraine with larger and larger missile barrages. It's only getting worse. Whose side is the US on, he says, as an American. Okay. Moving on to other bits and pieces. So, Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi says that Russia has set a goal of capturing Chasiv Yar by the 9th of May. That is Victory Day in Russia. So, we had March the 17th, Election Day. Now we're looking at May, 9th of May, which has previously been a big date in the calendar, symbolic date. The Kremlin, Russia, and Putin particularly love their symbolism of dates. In line with the future targets of reaching Kramatorsk agglomeration, that's behind Chasiv Yar, where Ukrainian Eastern HQ is located. Full message. I worked in another very important and dangerous direction. The enemy is also concentrating efforts to break through our defences west of Bakhmut to reach the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal, capture the settlement of Chasiv Yar, and create conditions for further advance in the Kramatorsk agglomeration. The implementation of the enemy's plans is hindered by the heroic defence of our brigades, which literally dug into the ground, holding back the enemy's daily attacks using numerical superiority and various motivational factors, including shooting of their own. Separate groups of enemy infantry reached the Novi district, but were destroyed by the FPV kamikaze strikes and artillery fire. At the same time, the threat remains relevant, taking into account the fact that high Russian military leadership has set the task for its troops to capture Chasiv Yar by May the 9th. In order to respond adequately in the actions of the enemy, and strengthen the defence of our troops in this direction, measures were taken to significantly strengthen the brigades with ammunition, drones and EW, electronic warfare devices. The main conclusion from the 2-day work of the front is the need to improve the quality of training, including the moral and psychological component, to increase the number of high-tech unmanned systems of various purposes and trained operators, to improve the quality of conducting asymmetric operations in order to reduce the combat potential of the enemy. We continue to carry out organisational activities with an emphasis on increasing the efficiency of management, eliminating duplication, directing freed resources to support combat units and units. The main task of these measures is to increase the fighting capacity of our troops, save the lives of our soldiers, disrupt the enemy plans, and ensure the preparation of reserves. So it's all about Chasiv Yar at the moment and looking like making it more efficient, actually getting a much closer view of what's going on the ground, it seems, Syrskyi, and saying, we need to work on this, that, and that. I wasn't aware that, our asymmetry has been dwindling and we need to put some more effort into, drone capabilities and electronic warfare, etc., etc. Meanwhile, in Russia, the floods still continue in Kurgan, Russia, some 1,000 kilometers from Orsk and Orenburg. Major flooding is affecting the city of 300,000 and its surrounding areas as the water level increased by nearly a meter, over the past day. Local wooden bridges are washed away. There's some quite incredible imagery of entire bridges floating down the river, wooden bridges, albeit. And I forgot to mention this the other day. So there was news that a 12-year-old who lost both her legs, a 12-year-old girl, Ukrainian girl, in a strike on Ukraine, has got 2 prosthetic blades and is running the Boston Marathon. Yana Stepanenko running the Boston Marathon. Unbreakable spirit, glory to Yana. Brilliant stuff, and hopefully, that'll make people realise who might otherwise look at Ukraine as being a corrupt nation that deserves to be attacked by the Russians, some kind of weird reason that some people might have. Look at that and go, oh yeah, here's a girl that's lost her legs due to what the Russians have done. Yeah, okay, let's think about that. And just a cautionary note here about disinformation. So here's a video published by Jackson Hinkle. Jackson Hinkle is pro-Russia, Iran, really, anti-Israel. Although some of his positions on Israel have been justified, but anyway, he is just a divisive character. He's an American disinformation pro-Putin puppet. He published a video, and others have published it, that's been viewed nearly 5 million times, and it claims to show Israelis panicking as Iran's missiles and drones reach Israel. The video is Louis Tomlinson, who is formerly of One Direction, like the boy band from the UK, and his fans near the Four Seasons Hotel in Buenos Aires in Argentina last week. Not Israelis panicking, but teens really excited about a heartthrob coming to town. It's so difficult to keep a handle on what is true and what isn't true these days. just be careful what you look at, and I need to be really careful as well. We are all easily victim to misinformation and disinformation, and we just need to be on our guard, especially in such fractious times. Anyway, that's enough from me. Take care. Speak soon. Toodle pips.